Welcome back to The Unacceptable News. I'm your host, Justin Bush. Tonight's story is about a stray cat that I have befriended. Just kidding. Tonight's story is about a black triangle UFO that I personally saw myself. Now, the history of black triangle UFOs goes back a very long time. There's a historical case back in the 1500s from Germany where a large spear-shaped black object was seen over a town near Nuremberg. When this case happened, there supposedly were multiple witnesses in this town of this large black object, and they described what appeared to be some sort of aerial battle between many smaller objects that were seen in close vicinity of the larger craft. There's also a great historical account from South America. There's a culture down there that said that they all originated from 7 alcoves in a cave. They said that a large black spear-shaped object, they sometimes interchangeably use spear or knife, but a large black obsidian blade came down, and apparently the people that were inside of it were stuck on Earth. They treated these people as gods, but essentially they said that they had reigned over this area for some time and then eventually left. The people of this region said that all of the 7 tribes were created by the people that came from the sky in this black spear-shaped object. Now, we've heard of many black triangular and spear-shaped objects over the years. The Phoenix Lights case, supposedly there was a black object. Some people declared it a triangle shape, some people said that it was a boomerang shape, but ultimately these black craft have been seen going way back to antiquity all over the world. And in the 90s there was a rash of black triangle sightings over Belgium, and that's why most people refer to these craft as the Belgian Triangle. Some people refer to them as the TR-3B, which was a supposed black program out of the United States government that created these black so-called spaceships or space vehicles that had the capability of leaving Earth and going out into space. Some people claim it's the Aurora Project, and there's this craft that has this ability to fly very similar to the TR-3B, but really we don't know where these objects come from. The reason I bring this up now is because with my personal sighting of this object, I was about 100 yards away at one point. The object was probably about a 45-degree, 55-degree angle from me, perhaps about 100 yards away. It was so close that you could see up into the craft. Now, I will show you some videos of these supposed triangle craft now. Now, these triangle craft, all of them have a similar shape, but they're described with characteristics that cannot easily be explained. Now, back in the 90s and the 2000s, when many of these triangle objects had been seen and some photographed, such as in the Belgian case, the government essentially came out and debunked it and said none of these are UFOs, these are all stealth fighters, these are all B-2 bombers, they have this, triangular airfoil shape. The problem with that argument is that none of our stealth fighters or B-2 bombers have the ability to hover, none of them have the ability to be silent. They also don't exhibit the same lights that are seen in these triangle craft. For instance, over and over and over again, hundreds if not thousands of times, the people that are seeing these craft are reporting these spherical, globe-shaped, glowing objects on the underside of the craft, and many of them are describing a single point of light in the center of the object. Now, sometimes people describe this as a white light on the outside of the craft, sometimes they describe it as a red light on the center, and vice versa. The craft that I saw was hovering. It was moving very, very slowly. It made zero noise. It never turned. It never changed its angle of attack to fly. So this is indicative of something that is not using lift to fly. Now, when you have a Harrier jet, for instance, if it's just 1,000 yards away, the noise from the jet engines when it's doing a vertical takeoff and landing are so loud that they can be heard for a very long distance. When you have an object that's able to get off of the ground, it's able to hover, it's able to fly, it doesn't have to change its angle of attack, and it makes zero sound. Well, now you have a problem where you have thousands of sightings of these objects with no explanation of what they could be. Now, in my case, this happened in the early spring, late winter, 2017-2018 winter. I believe it was in March. Now, when I went outside and I was standing there with a friend that doesn't want to come forward at this time, this object was landed in a field nearby. It lifted off the ground and it flew over a elderly woman's home. She had a small white single-story home, and then it crossed a road and it came closer to us, and we were talking about it as it happened. When it flew directly above us, we were able to see into the bottom of the craft, and there were 3 spherical orangish red glowing hemispheres. If you took a golf ball and cut it in half and glued it on a flat surface, there were these protrusions on the corners of the craft. But from our angle, it looked like these hemispheres were actually embedded in the craft, more like a pod light. So if you were to drill a hole in, say, a piece of wood, and you put that golf ball inside the hole, the shadows on the edges of these lights, these luminescent objects that were in the corners of the craft, seemed to be embedded in the craft. They didn't seem to be protrusions. Now, we've heard many reports that these objects on the corners of the craft ascend and descend away from the craft to create some sort of stability within the craft. We've heard this with certain types of UFOs, and we've heard it with certain types of black triangle craft. I cannot say with any certainty whether these were embedded. Perhaps it was just the angle or the way it was lit. But these objects didn't seem to be lights at all. They didn't illuminate anything in the nearby area. They seemed to be almost plasma. So there have been some plasma reactor experiments, and we can show you one now to just give you an understanding of the approximation of what I was seeing. The triangle seemed to have these glowing hemispheres embedded in the corners of the craft as it slowly flew over a neighbor's home just across the street. Now, the center point of light was white, but it blinked with a constant irregularity. The FFA has certain parameters around lights and what color they should be, the distinctions that they should make to give more safety to other air traffic. This object was flashing a white light in the center of the triangle that had no noticeable pattern, and not only that, but it had no green indicator light, which if you've ever looked up in the night sky, you'll see aircraft flying around all the time. They have a red and a green indicator light along with usually some flashing white lights. So this object flew, it lifted up over the house, it lifted up over some trees, it ascended a nearby mountain peak and then descended the other side, or at least that's what it looked like. Now, I'm not saying it disappeared or flew off at some unimaginable speed. That's not what we saw. It seemed to us as it just went down the backside of the mountain. It was able to hover at such a low speed so silently that a jet engine simply cannot describe the capabilities of this craft. Now, this craft was almost as long as this man's house, so I'm guessing between 60 to 100 feet on each corner. And when you have an object that's 60 foot long, that's about the size of a fighter jet. Most fighter jets are about 50 feet long or so, and it is able to fly like this. then you have a real conundrum about how to explain it scientifically. And with all these hundreds or thousands of sightings worldwide of these triangle craft, sometimes they're the TR-3B is what people are calling them, sometimes people believe they're from space. But the encounter that I had before this object lifted off seemed to indicate that it is owned and operated by military personnel. These people were running around at night using headset radios, or I actually can't say if they were headsets or not. I imagine they were, but they were certainly using radios to communicate, and we heard them that night right before this triangle craft lifted off and flew away. There's a much more in-depth explanation. I probably didn't do as good a job as I could have, but there's a much more in-depth explanation in my book that's in the description of my channel, should you choose to read it. This encounter with this triangle object has now made me rethink what these triangles are. Just because they have an amazing propulsion capability doesn't mean that they're alien. If you see a military operation in close proximity to one of these objects, then it lends a lot of credence to many of the rumors we've heard over the years, where everybody is saying, no, the triangles, they're military. The spheres, the discs, all of the tubes and tic tacs, those are alien. The triangles are us. My personal experience, I think that now I believe that, whereas the day before I didn't believe that at all. If I had seen an object such as that the day before with no context, I would have just assumed, given its capability, that it must have been something that a advanced race must have owned. But with the context added, now I myself believe that this is a military technology. We've heard lots of people, supposed whistleblowers, saying that Lockheed Martin makes this specific craft for the United States government, and I believe that is a distinct possibility now. So what do you think? Do you think these triangle craft are military, or do you think that there's something else? If you'd like to support our channel, go to the description or in the pinned comment down below. That's the unacceptable news. Don't like, don't subscribe, just run.